Oh, before we start, just
Oh,
out of curiosity.
yeah, sorry, it's just launching.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry.
It's okay. Hi.
I think it's just setting it up now.
Oh, it says it's live.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
All right, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Fish. I'm from the Court the Sexual Assault Center as a community engagement facilitator, and we have something amazing happening every Tuesday night in June. We are doing some trauma-informed yoga with Yami, who joins me. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you this afternoon?
I'm fabulous. Yeah, it's like as I think Sheldon Cooper says, prevening now.
A pre-evening. I love it. I love it.
Okay, so trauma-informed yoga. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is? I know I've done it and I've loved it. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about trauma-informed yoga?
Yeah, trauma-informed yoga, or as I like to sometimes put it, yoga that focuses on healing and centered engagement, is really about a practice that focuses on body and breath and recognizing that we all have experiences of harm and centering the ways in which we can adapt our yoga practices to reflect that, whether it be the different shapes and forms or what is commonly known in yoga practice, the asanas or the poses. So really what it takes into account specifically for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence or those impacted by sexual or gender-based violence is that there's certain shapes or forms that don't necessarily work and can be triggering. So what does it look like to adapt the body? I know we're in a Zoom construct of a world right now, but when I held these classes in person, what does it look like to cultivate a space where folks don't have to worry about being touched by, their yoga teacher to correct their posture, and knowing that there's nothing to correct in the way that we show up, on our mats is exactly how it's supposed to be. Um, Trauma-informed yoga also allows us to connect, and yoga in general does allow us to connect with our breath through pranayama, which is breath work, to be able to gain awareness of what's going on within our body, because sometimes that's not always accessible. I know for me, sometimes it's not always accessible. So it's really about taking into account language and the different folks that show up to class and the different asanas or shapes and forms, and catering that so it can support the needs of people who are going through different healing journeys.
Yeah, definitely. Like when you're already insecure about yourself, about this pose that you have to do, and then the teacher comes up and touches you and corrects you and moves you, like I know for me, like I feel like a sense of defeat, like I'm not good enough. I'm not
Mm,
able to do this properly. And that's something I really love about the trauma informed yoga you do, is that, it's really about being with yourself and moving in the way, creating the shape that creating the shape that your body wants to make, essentially. And so
yeah.
how can trauma informed yoga support your healing journey?
I think that trauma informed yoga, I guess I'll just tell a story about myself. I identify as a survivor myself, and yoga was something that I used to be able to connect with what was actually physically happening and in my body, and also allowed me to regulate when I felt like really activated, especially after like really intense counseling sessions and or just knowing that things were going on with the person that had caused me harm. And so, what yoga did, the practice of breathing, the practice of moving slow, the practice of connecting with my body allowed me the agency to decide and practice. Like, okay, do I really want to be doing this? Do I not? And if I don't, what's the consequence of not doing it? Oh, nothing. Oh, I get to decide. So it also allows for like um a practice of self, a practice of a practice within self to be able to figure out what you want and need. For me, I know that I love a good slow yin class because in my day to day I'm always moving really quickly, and so it also allows us to, or can allow us rather, the opportunity to connect with our body from a place of agency, as you get to decide what works for you, what doesn't. If you're like, yeah, me, not today. You know what? That's a-okay. Or, Yemi, I want to try this, or this feels better. By all means, let's do it, So it's really about creating that container for folks to be able to connect with body breath, as well as with other survivors. My gosh, right? Like the biggest thing I always felt was that I was alone. And you're like, with this experience and with this class, it's also this practice. It's about cultivating spaces where we can be with one another and know that we're not isolated in our experience, which I think is so important.
Mm-hmm. And so one thing you mentioned is that I've never even like heard or experienced was just like, yeah, I mean, I'm not feeling it. Can we do something else? And so, yeah. So I obviously in person is a lot different than online, but what does a trauma-informed yoga class look like? What does it feel like online, I guess specifically?
Yeah, totally. Well, the feeling that you'll get will be yours alone. I know that sometimes folks walk away feeling good. I know that sometimes people walk away feeling angry. Sometimes people walk away feeling sad. So the feeling that you get will be your own, and I want to honor that in naming that. Often within yoga, there's this mainstream yoga. There's this idea that we will walk away after a class feeling good, and I don't have agency to tell you how you're going to feel. But in terms of what the structure will look like, it starts off with breath work. So we just, slow down, maybe do some deep belly breathing. I always, in my language that I use as a teacher, will invite people to breathe in a way that feels most authentic to them. And then we move through some shapes and forms, also known as the asanas or yoga poses. So we may do some neck stretches. We may do some cat and cow to open up the spine, if that works. And one of the things that I strive to do as a teacher is to make sure that I'm accessible, or striving to be as accessible as possible, because I'm human, and I know that I can make mistakes, but I definitely always want to be accountable. And so what that looks like is, being able to move from a chair to the floor, or creating a class or a sequence that really allows for all bodies to participate. So we do about 40 minutes of that, and then come down with some more breath work and some meditative practices. And then, if you want to chat with me after for a little while, there's always opportunity to. But yeah, that's a general overview of overflow, an overview. And every class has a specific theme. And so trying to embed that. I know our theme tomorrow is going to be focusing on consent. And so incorporating that as we move through the different shapes and forms.
How do you incorporate consent into moving through the different shapes?
Yeah, totally. So one way that I do that as a holder of space or an instructor is I'll ask, for example, if we are seated in easy pose with our legs crossed, I'll ask folks like, is this comfortable? Do you need to make adjustments? And is this actually a shape that you want to be taking right now? Is there something else that you would like to be doing? And leaning into that, and giving not folks permission, but allowing them to explore what works for them. And so what's so incredibly beautiful about hosting spaces sometimes, and something I've experienced in person, is like sometimes when that invitation is met, the whole class will all be doing something different. And it's so cool, because I'm just like, yes, like do what works for you in this moment. It's not about me as an instructor. Like I'm just here to hold space in the best ways that I can. And so yeah, it's really about taking that agency, and making it and practicing it on the mat. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it really just comes down to whatever type of shape or form that you want to make. And even at some point in the class, everyone might be doing something totally different. And I think that in and of itself is pretty pretty radical, that we can you know, take the shape, take the healing journey that our body wants to take. Because
Right.
something that you just mentioned in our Instagram live is that, you know, yoga is pretty whitewashed. It's pretty performative. It's, you know, rooted in this, you have to be in this position, you have to be this flexible, you have to have your leg up over your head, and then, you know, be holding yourself on your hands. And so, you know, I really love that this gives agency, it gives consent back to the survivor, back to the yogi, if you will. And so, you know, one thing that, you know, we've been really purposeful about having on our promo is that this is a BIPOC and trans and queer inclusive space. Why is that important for an instructor like yourself?
I think it's important, as I said in the Instagram live, because we are in a world where queer and trans bodies, Black bodies, Indigenous bodies are experiencing disproportional rates of violence and harm. And, you know, I think spaces of healing sometimes have a monetary uh, factor attached to it. And so for me, it's important that not only are the classes physically accessible, monetarily accessible, but also take into account and center the most quote unquote marginalized. Because I also do know that like communities of color, Black folks, Indigenous folks, queer and trans folks have agency. But focusing those voices in and those experiences as they're also my experiences and identities that I hold are super important because it decenters, you know, who often we see at the front of a class, whether it be yoga, whether it be, you know, in healing spaces, etc. And so, yeah, I think it's a radical act to be able to center those folks, and it's a necessary act. And for me, I just have a tremendous amount of gratitude for folks who trust me to be able to hold that space for them. Yeah, so it's important. It's important, right? And I could go on for like days. So I'll stop here.
No, for sure. Yami, if people want to hear you go on for days, how can they contact you?
Yeah, totally. So the best way, like the social media that I tend to like update the most, I'm just being real, y'all, is my Instagram and my Facebook for the most part. So you can contact me there, or you can visit me at my website at yamimisosa.com and get my contact information there.
Definitely. I am so excited. I'm always excited for these collaborations, but every Tuesday, the month of June, that's June 9th,
Yeah.
16th, 23rd, and 30th from 6:30 to 7:30, you can register with KSAC to do some trauma-informed yoga. That is ksac@nexicom.net. Yami, I am so excited to see you tomorrow night. Thank you for coming on and
Yay! Thanks
answering
for
some
having me back,
questions.
y'all. It's our second series together. We did one right when COVID hit, and so I'm excited to come back and hold space with you and be within community. So yeah.
For sure. You know, the phone's off the hook. People are calling in. You don't have to call me. You can
I love
you
it.
can
I love
email
it.
us.
I
So
love it. I love it.
the wonders of doing things online. Anyway,
Right?
Yami, thank you so much for taking this time, and I look forward to
Absolutely.
seeing you tomorrow night.
Look forward to seeing you too. Take care.
Bye, you too.
Bye.